What CMS do they use?
They use, believe it or not, they use Outlook.
Hi, I'm Scott.
That's
Are you in the right place?
I'm considering between Vista and the synchronous. So I guess I could stay here. I was new to Vista. I just started at Outstanding Community College.
Okay.
And so what I figured is I could get as familiar as possible with Vista. Because I'm looking at using it for new technologies and
I'll tell you what Mike's going to tell you later.
Oh, okay.
So basically, he's going to talk about live classroom and doing that kind of
Skyping and whatnot.
yeah, that kind of stuff.
Oh, great. So yeah, I also I'm looking to just work with Drexel.
Yeah, and that's the Drexel crew in the back.
All right, I'll sit with you guys. You're fun. Great. Yeah, because you host us, or we.
Hi, I'm Scott. Are you from Boston?
I'm from Bucks. I'm the new guy. We have two new librarians there. I'm the emerging technologies librarian. Jackie Fritz is the new media librarian. So
I'm Steve.
I'm Matt Sutter.
Here's Steve Rich Furness. Name, Mike, Matt.
Matt Sutter.
Simon, okay.
Hey,
Brent's Mr. SharePoint.
Mr. SharePoint, fantastic. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at, I'll be talking through the forum with the Blackboard people and maybe it'll neat stuff for us. Which would be great.
And George Lynn's got something to say too.
Yeah, she's great.
How many
She'll
people
be
looking at class?
the recipe for quality assurance and designing.
I had
courses.
one
She'll be
class
down
where
there.
was only
Yeah,
maybe 12, and another one.
I would absolutely love to make your life easy and make the students, or give the students something extra.
And they were from all
Yeah,
over,
that's
like,
good.
I worked for a company that we had
All the
a company overseas,
managers,
so I knew how to, time
very
difference
basic
and everything.
function
And
from
they
being
put us in groups where we
Oh, yeah?
actually had to work with
That's great.
people
A lot,
that
it touches
were
a lot of the tools.
in a different
Yeah, a
time
lot of
zone.
tools
So
have
we could go on
option.
Japan,
So,
Germany, but it gets you used to that, working that way, because it's a global world and.
Yeah, I have a woman. How is this now? I turned it on. Yeah, I have a woman in South Korea in my online class now, and we have a little time zone challenge.
Well, with the team, if you had a question or you posted something, you knew that person was in a different time zone, so you would try to get everything done so they could see when they woke up in the morning. I loved it.
Okay, I'm going to get started. I'm Scott Beadenkopf. I'm listed on the program as from Neumann University, which is where I work. I'm the Director of Academic Technology there, which means I'm the Chief Faculty Support Person. But I'm actually a Drexel University employee. Neumann is one of the partner schools that hosts Blackboard on Drexel servers, and then they get me as part of the bargain. I've been involved with technology for a long time. There I am. So I worked done a lot with medical education. So I taught high schools for a little bit, and then jumped into medical education, and have worked at Jefferson and Medical College of Pennsylvania. Medical College of Pennsylvania joined with Hahnemann, became Allegheny University. It went bankrupt. Drexel University started managing it, and now it's all one happy family. Now I've met most of you. I'm just curious, you're an instructor then?
Yes.
Okay, and you're an instructor also? Or
I teach one class and I also am an instructional
you're an instructor mostly?
Well,
Or the techie?
I sort of dance back and forth between library and learning resources. So I'll teach media literacy and information literacy while working with emerging technologies to build projects for instruction, but there's also faculty instruction. I'm just the garbage man of information literacy, or you know what I mean? I cover a little bit of everything. And I love that job because of the fact that I'm not, pigeonholed. So I do a little bit of everything.
And Kathy, you're primarily an instructional technologist, right? And you're our sales rep?
I'm a client manager.
Client manager.
Yep.
Okay. Great. And then the folks in the next row there, they're on the online learning team at Drexel. Should I use this or should I turn this off? I'm not sure.
Sounds great with it on.
Okay. The group manager in Blackboard Vista is a way to create student groups. You can set them up randomly, so you just assign people randomly to student groups, manually, or you can use sign-up sheets. And these groups can be linked to assignments, chat rooms, and discussions. And we'll get into this in probably more detail than you want. What I'm going to do is just cover the basics of the group manager, look at a few tricks on how to use it, some problems that we've discovered with it, and then I have a few shots from Learn 9 of the group manager there as well. Does that sound okay? All right. So if you've created assignments in Blackboard Vista, you've probably, let's see if I can do this. You've probably seen this. Normally you assign assignments to all students individually, but there's this other button here for groups of students. And you see this, of course, this is a screen from Build, Build, Teach, and Student View. This is from Build. So you can see this groups of students, even if you're not an instructor in the course. And if you have groups, if you've already created groups in the course, then in addition, it also says select groups. So even if you're not the instructor, you can see what groups are available. In the Teach tab is where you create groups. So the group manager is only available in the Teach tab. And so you can see we can create a custom group and then add members to it. We can create multiple groups, and this is where you have the option of doing random groups or manually assigning them. Or you can create groups with sign-up sheets. And there's a few little pitfalls with the sign-up sheets that I'll get into in a minute. So, most often I think you would be coming in. You'd be interested in creating multiple groups. If you choose that second option, create multiple groups, then you can create, you can see empty groups, full groups where you randomly distribute. And if you're going to randomly create groups, then you have the option of checking off include the demo student. So the demo student, when you're in student view, you're actually kind of logged in as the demo student. And if you don't include the demo student in your group, in one of your groups, the demo student won't be able to see anything that's assigned just to groups. So you want to make sure either when you do it randomly or manually to put the demo student in one of your groups. So after you create the groups, it takes you to a screen where it shows you whatever name you give it up here. It then adds a number to that name and creates whatever number of groups you want. Once you've created the groups, you can then rename them, call them Blue or Red or George or whatever you want to call them. And you can add a description to them. After the groups are created, when you choose Edit group, you can then add students to it if you didn't choose the option to do it randomly. And one thing that's useful to remember is that no matter how you set up the groups, you as an instructor can always go in and change who's in them. You can delete people from them, you can add people to them. You have complete control over the groups, even if you use student sign-up sheets. So you can see I'm adding, in this view, I'm adding demo student to the group. Just in case you're wondering why I have 2 demo students, the second one is a demo student that I created so that I can actually log in as a student from time to time to see some things that the demo student can't. Let me go back. So the other interesting thing on this slide is this find members. If you just have 4 students in your class, obviously find members is kind of superfluous. But if you have 30 or 50 or 300 students in your class, the find members can be quite useful. And when you click it, you get this screen, and it says column. Show members that satisfy this condition. Column. What column do you think they're referring to? It's columns in the grade book, right? So, for instance, if you gave a pretest or a diagnostic test to see who remembers basic algebra, and you find that half your class does not, you could set up a condition that anybody who scored less than 50% would go into a remedial basic algebra group. And then you could give that group different assignments than the ones who remembered. Or you can set up a criteria based on their roles. So, you could have auditors in one group and students in another, and so forth. Any questions so far? Okay. So, now I thought this was cool. Okay, great, I can set up groups. And it wasn't until one of the folks in our team showed me another button on this screen that I thought, wow, groups are really cool. And that is this create group activity button. So for instance, if you choose discussion topic, and then you click the little green arrow, it takes you through the normal process of setting up a discussion topic, the instructions and what category, and then it creates a separate discussion topic for each group, and it sets conditional as basically selective release. And if we look at those conditions, it shows, for instance, that only people in group 1 can see discussion topic 1, right? And only people in group 2 can see discussion topic 2. And it's just like magic. So anyway, now, one little pitfall here is that if you're creating graded discussion topics, it creates 2 columns, right? So it creates a column for each topic, not one topic for everybody. So if you make them visible, the people in group 1 will also see group 2, they'll see both grade places. So they'll see one that they won't have a grade in, and they'll see the other that they do have a grade in. So to avoid confusion, it's best to release the students to know for those 2 columns, and then to create a 3rd column where you sum or there's various formula you can use to put the grades in this column. I just did a sum, add those 2 columns together, and then the students just see this 3rd column, and they'll see whatever their grade is plus 0, so it's going to be their grade. That's not too advanced, is it? Is that clear?
That's a good idea.
Yep.
Does that make sense, Mike? Okay. Are you,
Students
yeah.
can only group 1 will see group 1.
Right. So, but instead of showing the grade, so if it's a graded discussion topic, now, the grades for discussion topics are different from grades for assignments. Let me just mention this. If you, back when you're creating an assignment, so it's like a project or a presentation, and if it's assigned to a group, then there's just one grade for that project, and every member of the group gets that grade. Okay, so if you like the blue group's presentation and you give them an A, every member of the blue group gets an A and it appears in their grade book, in your grade book, and they see an A next to that project. For a graded discussion, however, even though it's a group topic, each person gets an individual grade. So there's not a group grade for a discussion, it's still an individual grade. And you get to choose whether that grade is released to them or whether you do it a different column for that. What do you think, Matt? Are you lost, or does this all make sense?
Oh yeah, I'm writing everything down that you're saying.
Okay.
I'm making
cool.
sure. So yeah, in discussions is where you have a time for individual achievement, and you get, an individual grade. Whereas the projects are considered group projects, so everybody has to chip in to try to get an A. And
Right.
so that means then working as, so yes, got it.
Okay. Everything cool, Kathy? Do you know all this? Okay, good. Okay, so there's a few cautions here. If you have a group, like the blue group, and they get an A, and then you take George out of the blue group and put him in the red group, he still has that A because he was in the blue group when he got that A. And that makes sense, really, because he was in the group when he did the work, so he gets that A. Though it's possible, that you could not like that, that he really did it, he wasn't working and you put him in the red group because you wanted him to work. But of course, you as the instructor have complete control over the grade book. So you can go in and manually change his grade if you need to. Now, it was like 2 years ago, I was teaching an educational technology course, and I said, okay, we're going to have groups. We're going to use this great group feature, and we're going to do student sign up. So I want everybody to sign up, and well, you probably may know students better than I do, but first thing they wanted to know is, I want to be in his group or her group, and so they would start signing up, and they realized that Samantha was in a different group, so they said, no, we both want to be in this group. Well, there's a little problem here, is because students can't unsign up from a group. So one thing I learned is that you should have students take some time to think about their groups, maybe set up their groups on paper, and then do sign-ups. The second problem I ran into is that the database doesn't just automatically refresh just as you move somebody from one group to another. You may not see, the students may not see that reflected on what they see right away. They may have to log out and log back in order to see a different group. And we've even had some flakiness in the database, where it won't catch that right away. And I didn't put up a slide about that because you know, it may depend on what service pack you're running. It may have been fixed in service pack 3, I'm not sure. Or, you know, it may just be something that we did wrong or something. So, but my recommendation here is be very careful. You know, don't just change people from group to group. You know, and think that there are no consequences, because there could be consequences. And it's really important to have the demo student, and maybe you could even, if you're going to change a person from one group to another, maybe you should change the demo student from one group to another, so you can you know, see how those changes are reflected as well.
Now, there are more motivated students and less motivated students, of course, in classes. We've all run into that problem. So my question for you is, before you actually have group signups, since you have so many people that often will organize based on friendships or, you know, previous relationships, that instead of having everybody determine their own group, you try to make sure to intersperse different group members according to sort of motivation, grade point average, education level, and other things, in order to make sure that in a group you don't have, say, many unmotivated people in the same group together, which just get an F immediately, in order to give, it's sort of the circle school philosophy often espoused, which is, if you know you have learned something, then you can teach it to group members who may not have the same level of motivation that you do.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Different learning style.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That ideally you know something about the students in your class, and you thoughtfully place them in groups. So, for instance, in a class I taught recently, with faculty, for instance, I tried to group people from different departments so that they wouldn't all know each other. And then in other times I put them together in departments depending upon the purposes of the group.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to say something about how you create groups? Bruce?
I wanted to mention about caution. One of the professors at Drexel had done the group enrollments before the start of term, and then at the beginning of the term, I guess, I don't remember if it was a student that dropped or needed to be added, and he had some difficulty and we needed to help him. He couldn't do it himself without changing all the assignments. He had many assignments. Do you remember the details on that, Steve?
Not that particular one, no.
I think we had to end up, what's that? Not recreating his course, bringing it back to the way it was at the beginning, before the beginning of the term, because he had so many assignments based on the same groups. So that was a weird case. I don't think I've seen that before, but that's something to be aware of, the drop ads.
Yes, and
We had somebody who didn't want the students to know who was in the groups already, so that the friends couldn't necessarily be together. And I think there's a feature where you can turn off,
yes.
so
If
you don't
you're-
see who's already in there, so they didn't know whether the friends were already in there or not.
Right. If you're doing group signups, there's a checkbox for whether they can see who's in the group or not. But they're going to know anyway. Have you used groups when you're just teaching in a face-to-face class? Have you had experience with setting up groups there?
I use it for discussion only.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried the assignment yet. So I group them based on the first day I give them some kind of ask them fill in some basic data about themselves, like, what courses you have taken so far and what is your some background. And then I group them based on their maybe some are very strong in math or some full I use.
Very
I
good.
have 5 groups in my class, I have 20 students.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I like that. So you do a questionnaire
Yeah.
at the first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you might want to do, for instance, is hide assignments until you're really ready to use them. Because once people actually go in, especially once anybody submits an assignment, then it can be very difficult to change anything. Matt?
Just had an interesting idea. Often, clicks form in a classroom. So what I was thinking was, what if you started with, say you have 20 kids in a class, and you said, all right, I'd like you to group by 2. So that each person found, the groups were 2 people. And then the next time you said, well, I'd like you to group by, let's say, 4. So you'd have then 5 groups. And then you could say, well, I'd like you to group by 5. And then you continued to bring the number up as a means to get more and more inclusive in sort of building camaraderie among the students. It doesn't necessarily go with what you're talking about right now, but it just kind of came to my mind, and I raised my hand because I thought, wow, that could be a really great way of getting students to know other students. So I apologize for bringing it up. I tend to do that.
Thanks for bringing that up, actually, because I think in an online course, for instance, especially if you've got more than 10 students in it, you really want to work on building community, because one of the texts that we use in my online course is Building Online Community by Paloff and Pratt. And if you have a real community where people are freely discussing issues, then you can get a kind of group creation of knowledge where people can understand the content in a way that they couldn't just on their own. And but how do you build that community? And I've experimented a little bit with different things. So for instance, we've been using Wimba Pronto, that instant messaging client. And I was curious to know, if people can do instant messaging to each other, is that going to subtract from the community, or is it going to add? And my conclusion is it adds to the community. Anything you can do to build relationships between 2 people, 4 people, or 8 people, is going to add to the whole community. I mean, it's not to say you couldn't get, 2 people that would interact only with each other and exclude everybody else, but I haven't seen that. So thanks. Okay, yeah, so basically, try not to change things once you set things up. Now, if you do change groups or change assignments, always use the demo student to make sure that things are still the way you expect them to be.
Scott?
Yeah.
You mentioned that before you create the groups, you'd want to do something on paper ahead of time. How would you do that in an online course? Or are you just, are you just going to, put out like a document or something and say, what are some of your preliminary preferences, and then they just submit it, or how would you do that?
Well, what I did in my current online course, I did sign-up sheets, but somebody in the group actually suggested, well, if we're going to have a group, maybe we should make sure that everybody in the group all has the same night free. So we just set up groups, a Tuesday night group and a Wednesday night group. So yeah, the paper it doesn't work. So there. All right. So going on, this is Learn 9. It has basically the same options: self-enroll, manual enroll, and random enroll, or create single group. But it has a lot more tools available to the groups. So So you get to choose which tools you want to use. And then once the groups are created, so I'm really looking forward to this if we can ever migrate to this. So there's a lot more of collaboration tools available to a group. In addition to discussion boards, there's group file exchange, group collaboration, group tasks, group journal, and so on. So, but we're not there yet. So I think that is really all I have to do. So we can just, discuss more, or we can go back and prowl around in the other building, or go to Mike's presentation.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's just that, when you do the random group assignments, does the student demo get randomly assigned, or do you have to do that separately?
When you do the random assignments, there's the checkbox, and the only time I've used that, I think the demo student was assigned to group 1, but I imagine it would be random and could be in a different group as well. Let's see. So it just says include the demo student in one of the groups.
Is it necessary to include a demo student in every group?
No.
I don't think you can you?
You can. You could actually add the demo student to all of the groups. Then instead of so the demo student would see both of the discussion topics, for instance, whereas but you might prefer to have this demo student in just one group so you could see what it's like to be the demo student, to be a student. Yes, Chris?
Can you add the same person to multiple groups always?
Yes.
And groups?
When you set up sign-up sheets, when you do sign-up sheets, one of the options does say what's the maximum number of people in a group. So if you have 10 students in a class, you can say, I'm going to make 5 the maximum number. But you as instructor, you can put them all in one group even though the maximum is 5.
And let's see. Okay, but there's not like a functionality to. I guess I'm trying to understand how they could have gotten into trouble, or scenarios where changes to the underlying course enrollment could cause issues. It seems like it might be conceptual, like how the groups are designed to work. Like it seems like the groups, once they're created, they apply to like all time periods going forward. So like you create a group, it's a group, it exists. In fact, yeah, it exists from that point on because that group could get assignments.
Right.
So maybe that's where you get into.
Now, if you create like a project group or project A, and then you want to have different groups for project B, you can do that. You may get some error messages when you do it. You may get a warning, this student is already in a group or something like that. But you can ignore those as you're setting up the project B groups. And I think it's possible that some of the service packs have fixed that. I know when I did it 2 years ago, I got very confused, and I think Blackboard was confused also, but I'm not absolutely sure which one of us. You know, that old computer error message, one of us has made an error. Yes, so yeah, and I'm puzzled exactly how that would you would have a problem too. Now, it's important to remember that there is no linkage between the group manager and the grade book. So the grade book doesn't know what groups people are in.
They just get grades in the perfect
They get
column.
grades through, and the group manager can be involved in deciding who gets a grade if it's from an assignment. But once it's in the grade book, it has nothing to do with the groups. So then you handle the grade book separately. But I'm guessing that the linkage with an assignment, so an assignment when this is linked to a group, that's kind of in the background someplace where, you know, once that's done, you can't really see that, and that's probably where you're most likely to get problems.
Right, like if you made, let's see, if you make an assignment is simply made visible to people in a group. Okay, well,
I mean, we have time if you want. We can try playing with it. Like, we can bring up Blackboard and switch somebody from a group and see at what point they're not there anymore. Does anybody want to copy down my email before we get out of this? So, how much of a techie are you? Do you? Okay.
You are more than me. I'm sorry.
You could do it with your current class and take me out on Tuesday and put me on Wednesday.
Okay. I assume we have a browser. Does anybody else want to bring up this question or suggestion about groups while I'm logging in here?
Hey, you want to try the trick with making groups that continually get bigger? In other words, so we start unless you don't have a lot of demo members on the group. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I don't have
groups of 2, then groups of 4 or something. Maybe we should do, groups of 2 and then one group of 4 as an example. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't have. So I have a sandbox course, but I don't have a lot of people in that, and
Never mind then. I'm sorry.
I think the Wednesday group only had 2 people in it the other day,
right.
and I think we had 6 or 8 in ours.
This seems to have frozen. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going into Teach. Actually, I'm going to go with, maybe we should bring up another window and you can log into that. Well, I don't know if it will let us. Anyway, so in Teach, see here's the group manager below the gradebook. And I've got 2 groups here. You can see Kathy's in the first group. The demo student is in the Wednesday group. Right now, and then here's this group activity thing. Let me see, because I have I'm gonna use a sandbox group so we can.
Yeah, because you do have a discussion link just to the Tuesday people. Alright, is that what you're looking
Yeah,
for?
do I?
Yeah, it was the very last one, at least when I look at it from me, it's the very last one, it says discussion for Tuesday groups, like that.
What version are you using?
This is Vista 8 Service Pack 3. Yeah, it's essentially the same. So this is a sandbox section, and we have, this is the one that you saw the pictures of. So in discussions, I've got these two groups here, and we can go in to group 1, and if we do look at this set release criteria, and here's where we see equals group 1. If we go in and edit that, it just gives us, I created some other groups here. It just gives us all the groups that we've created. I'm just going to cancel. So if we log in as demo student, that is, if we go to student view and we go to discussions, so demo student is in group 1, and demo student doesn't see group 2 at all. So I'm just going to create a message as demo student here, and hi. All right. So now I'm going to go to teach. I'm going to go to discussions. And I'm going to grade topic. Can I click that? Okay. So here's demo student. I can look at demo student, view student posts, and I'll give demo a grade of 2. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the group manager. And I'm going to go into edit group, and I'm going to remove demo student from group 1. I'll save it. I'm going to go into group 2, edit group, and I'm going to add members, and I'm going to add demo student to group 2. Now I'm going to go to student view, and I'm going to go to discussions. Now a demo student doesn't see any discussion topics. Okay, so I'm going to try going, I'm just going to go out to BB Vista Home, and then I'm going to come back in and see if that refreshes it.
Wouldn't it just be the passage of time that refreshes it?
We'll find
Or,
Yeah.
sometimes when you're using certain programs, I've found that, unless you go to the Internet Explorer properties and say, grab
refresh.
new page every time I come to this page, sometimes it'll use an older page and, not update the information, and even if you hit refresh, it won't update the information. You have to set it every time I visit this page, because of the fact that, the way that the history and temporary internet files accumulate, it accumulates older pages that you've already used, but when you're using dynamic programs that contain AJAX or PHP that generate a website on the fly, it just grabs the older website instead of generating a new one for you, and that can get you into trouble.
Right.
Sorry.
But
me
in
being
this
nerd.
case, it didn't show them in group one, it showed them in node discussion topic.
Right, so it did change.
So, he's still in none. So I'm gonna try logging out and logging back in.
Scott, does group 2 have a discussion topic connected to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a lot of courses, so we're waiting for Internet Explorer to find them all. Firefox does this faster. Okay. I'm going to go to Student View. Discussions. Still not there. Okay. So, let's go back to Teach. Oh, you know what? I didn't save. Add members. Add select, sorry. Save. The members that were selected already belong to another assignment group. If you want to add the members to the new group, remove them from the other group. Click Continue. If you want to leave members in their current group, click Cancel. So, it let us add. Let's go to student. Not yet.
Oh, I guess my question is, are groups independent, or are they always associated with another group? In other words, when you go, do you have groupings of groups, or are they all just independent? So for example, is it like Moses parting the Dead Sea, so you have
Sure.
Dead Sea?
I understand. Yeah, so in other words, you can see I have two groups called Join Me, which have a sign-up sheet associated with them, and two other groups. But I think that they're independent, and that well, like for instance, if we go to assignments, and we'll create, we'll go to build, assignment, and we do create assignment, and we'll call it new assignment. And down here, where we want to assign it to groups of students, and we select groups. So it doesn't care that two of them were from a sign-up sheet and two of them from a different, so.
And a student can only be in one group total?
No, a student can be in multiple groups.
So you could conceivably assign the same student in two different groups could get the same assignment.
Yeah, I think. So I just wanted to note down here where in addition to having making assignments by groups, instead of you could choose assign all students individually, but create additional sets of instructions for groups of students. So that, for instance, in our basic math group, the ones that don't have forgotten algebra, you could say everybody reads chapter 2, but I want the students in remedial group to do problems 1 through 10, and students in the other group to do problems 11 through 20. And when we do select groups, see, we still have the option of checking that off to provide special instructions for the groups, even though okay, so let's go back to student view, see just if that has changed. No, the discussion topic for group 2 still isn't there. By the way, I'll show you what a sign-up sheet looks like. So here's the sign-up sheet. So the student just signs up by clicking one button or the other. And that's it. They can't, once they've signed up, you have successfully signed up and joined me 1. So if we click on that again as demo student, now they're both grayed out.
Well, I have a broader question.
Yeah.
Well, first, as background, did you happen to see that article in Wired about Craig Newmark, the founder of Craigslist?
No.
It's a very interesting. Well, suffice to say, he's a very perplexing character. He's like an anti-technologist. Like he won't add any features to Craigslist at all because he finds them burdensome. You can say, when you add in these different payment mechanisms and all this added stuff, it's easier for people just to come together and do things. And so I wonder, for a feature like this, what do you think is the threshold that it pays, to use a feature versus an instructor? Like, for example, if there's just 2 groups, it might be easier for the instructor, if it's not an online class, to say, just email me, pick a group, just email me. Or if it is an online class, if they have what's the word for the enrollment list? Is that if the students are able to see the other students in the class, the instructor might say, divide yourselves into 2 groups, pick representatives, have 2 of them email. So do you have any thoughts on where, because it does seem like, it seems like it's like a new, it's a whole new interface that someone has to learn and master to really use effectively.
Any thoughts? Yeah, Kevin?
Seems like in the working world, more and more times, regardless of like whether you're in the field of business or what field you're in, you at some point have to do a project with a group. So if nothing else, whether you're in a face-to-face class or an online class, this kind of gets you working with a different group of people you may not know. So for that exercise, I think there's some value to it.
I think you're bringing up an interesting point, actually, with the complication factor. One of the things that, and I'm going back to this not because I'm part of the Youth of America, but because I like Vygotsky. One of the potentials of social networking sites is the fact that they only give you enough information to fill out as you need it. And they don't give you too much at once. And one of the failings of a lot of educational or business software is that they give you too much information at once, and in the process of doing that, a lot of people get either confused or turned off. Then you have to bring in somebody like me or somebody like you guys to explain it to a recalcitrant teacher who's never used technology and believes that it's the scourge of society. And it's so complicated, it does look like the scourge of society.
Well, that is an interesting point that
Yeah.
that no one ever needed a class in Facebook. And
Yeah.
and it is pretty complicated, like objectively, like it's not like your 1-year-old could not use it.
But your 6-year-old probably could, because of Vygotsky theorem, which is you only give somebody enough information to get them to the next step. and they want to get to the next step because by the process of getting to the next step, you know, it's sort of like they get candy or they get dopamine or they get an emotional high, or for lack of a better term, they get an emotional boost. So like, okay, I just filled out my birth date and my basic information, and you know, oh cool, I get to express myself, dopamine release. Now I get to move on to the next step and do. Whereas with Blackboard, like I said, you get so much at once, it just flies in the face of Vygotsky theorem or Vygotsky theory. So like.
Well, so we tell faculty.
Yeah.
I mean, if possible, begin slow. Just put up your syllabus the first semester. The next semester, put up some course documents. The next semester, put up some assignments and so on. Yeah.
And now you've had to step in and do what many of these social networking sites just naturally do.
Yeah.
But that's really good that you do that because you've now built it in the way that makes it manageable. Great. Perfect.
Now, occasionally though, we get a faculty member who comes to us and says, I'm teaching an online class next term, but I've never used Blackboard. What should I do? Okay, one thing that I wanted to respond to Brett about, you know, is this overkill? For an online course, that's a fully online, I don't use group projects because, at least after the first time, because it's too hard for people to collaborate, really.
Yeah.
But I do use group discussion, especially. So if you have 20 people in an online course and you have an interesting discussion topic, you can have 200 discussion posts in that one topic.
Well, that's I mean.
And it becomes a burden for people to read them all. Not to mention the instructor, but you have no choice. And so one reason to have groups is just so, and also if you've got more than a dozen people in the online course, it's hard to get to know all of them. You know, so I think having the groups with a smaller number of people in them is useful to bring down. And also, one thing, I don't know if you remember it, at eLearning 2.0, I think it was last spring, there was somebody who had done statistical analysis of discussion posts. And he looked at whether, let's see if I can write on this. You know, whether if you've got, let's see. Okay. So if you've got the instructor, I'll just make the letter I. And you've got student, 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 student. So you could have discussion posts that are mostly like this, right? Or you could have discussions or you could have discussions that are like this, you know. Or you could have discussions that are like this and like, but when discussion, if you have a real community where people are really interacting and coming to grips with stuff, and it's not just the instructor, you know, you're going to see some instructor comments. You're going to see a lot of you're going to see a great
Cross discussions.
Yeah, cross discussions, and I think that's what we want to go for, really. And if you have too large a group, you're not going to see that. You're going to see kind of a lot of individual posts with a few replies. And a lot of it has to do with the instructions that you give the students.
Well,
Right.
obviously I think you can use Wimba to do some kind of voice
multicasting of the whole group. But is there a capability that would kind of fit into this group element that would just let groups of students
Well,
talk together?
Well, one of the options, remember, when
Oh,
you're,
does that too?
Does do that.
Oh, I did not, I guess I
You
need
set
to,
up the chat.
I need to sit up that,
The
sit, no,
whiteboard.
what's the,
Good templates.
online.
Does it actually give you a visual picture of that too?
If the student has a
Webcam.
camera and
Yeah.
microphone.
No, I mean like a visual explanation of the networking of ideas, or a visual picture of the networking of ideas, much in the same way that he wrote something up there. Because I just had a brainstorm flash, and I love this conversation, by the way, because you guys are giving me some great ideas, and I hope I bring something to the table as well. Have you ever heard of Prezi or Prezi? Prezi is how they say it in England.
what is,
Oh, it's a software. Actually, it's an internet-based software program that allows you to make interactive slides. It's not like PowerPoint. Actually, it's not like slides. It allows you to. It gives you a large board, and it gives you some basic media tools like uploading pictures and video and PDFs, and as well as putting text down and making sort of circles that can surround sort of boxes that you make. And the reason it would be useful is if you gave multiple students an ID for Prezi, like the same one, you could set it up so that they could put an idea down, and then somebody else could put an idea down and make an arrow that points to the other idea. And then another student could come in and put an idea down and make an arrow that points to somebody else's idea, so that you could actually have a visual representation of that sort of network collective of ideas that the students have put together. And then what you can do after all the students are done is you could actually make a path that bounces throughout the student collective, is what the word I'm going to use for this particular demonstration. And it would be a wonderful media integrated visual example of that collective mind working. You are awesome. Thank you for giving me so many great ideas.
you're welcome.
Asynchronous brainstorming session.
Doesn't Wimba have a whiteboard?
Yeah, so for the online class I'm teaching now, you won't have seen it yet because this folder is hidden at the moment. But I created, so there's the group discussions. I have live classrooms, for instance, so that I can go into.
Is that up yet?
I can go into selective release, Wimba classrooms, group 1, and then I can set the release criteria, and then I can do add group criteria, and make classroom 1 only for the Tuesday group.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's neat.
We'll save that. So this is a Wimba live classroom. Are you familiar with that?
I haven't used Wimba yet, actually.
It's a little
awesome.
bit like that. So, and then I'll make group 2. We'll set the release criteria for that. Add group criteria. And you can, by the way, if I didn't say it, I apologize. Any object you can set a release criterion through selective release. So when you use selective release, it sets criteria for links, right? So anything that has a link, anything that we can see in a folder, we can set a release criterion for. So for instance, I've got course documents here. Here's the course outline. I could make it so that only the people in the Tuesday group can see the course outline. Now that would be interesting.
I think I apologize.
Mike, you left out his email.
So anything that has a link, you can restrict to a group.
Those can stay open, right? As long as you want.
The groups can stay open,
No,
yeah.
I mean the whiteboard sessions.
Yeah,
You can keep those open. They don't have to be closed. So that what he's describing, students can go in at different times.
yeah, so the students can decide anytime they want to.
Right.
Right, so if, in a Wimble Live classroom, you can create breakout rooms.
I'm gonna hit that.
So you can all get together and then create breakout rooms also. I haven't really used that, but maybe we'll try that if we get more than 1 or 2 people on. Steve?
Do you think Whiteboard, the native tool, would be a little more appropriate than Live Classroom, because you don't have all that overhead of, you know, setting things up and whatnot?
Right. Yeah, so
And if you're not live, you probably don't need the voice of video.
right, so one of the things, and what I, in that sandbox section there, just before I left it, I created 2 chat rooms for the, or actually I was going to. So let's just go back and see if demo student can see the discussion posts yet. Go into student view, discussions. Demo students still can't see those discussion topics.
That could be a bug, right?
Actually, try to go into tools up in the internet browser. If you,
You want me to go to that page first?
or you can do or you can just delete the cache and start over, and it might recognize it. So if you go to tools, internet options, delete history, and the internet internet options, right? Hit delete right there in the center. Yep. Yeah, hit OK or delete. Hit OK. Hit OK, and then log out and log back in. I think I might have already done that for you. Or hit the refresh button right here.
There, now it's,
Oh, look,
see it? It's already there.
you're right.
It's just because it was using an old page to represent what was happening there. Because what happens is, the way the software works is it generates an HTML page and sends it to you. An HTML page that's actually generated on the fly. Doesn't really exist, basically. And what happens is Microsoft's Internet Explorer holds on to that old page. So when it goes to make a new page, Microsoft Internet Explorer basically says, well, I don't need that. And then it goes, well, okay. And
Well, if that's the case, then the Blackboard software has an incorrect header setting on their expires.
that's right. So the way to fix it, well, I've always found is to pull through every time I visit the page, refresh it.
Okay, so I'm going to create a group chat for these 2 groups. You must enter a valid maximum number of users for this room. Maximum users. Now I'm going to go to student view.
You might have to increase that number.
I think I need to go to build first. Chat's hidden. So I need to put a link to the, add content link chat. Okay, so I've created these 2 chat rooms and the links to them here. And now if we go to student view, the demo student who's in group 2 sees the group 2 chat room. And I'm just gonna, have you seen the chat rooms, Matt?
I actually used them back in college, so I'm sure they've been updated by now. For college and grad school. I basically went to college right at the time that WebCT and Blackboard came online. And I've also used them at Hack and Bucks County Community College.
I went to college when we used Abacus.
Wait, did you say stone tablets?
Oh, that's harsh.
I didn't hear what he said.
Abacus is what
Oh,
I
abacus. Slide rule,
You
right?
had to go to
Slide rule, yeah.
Yeah.
I brought a slide rule to college.
hard catalog system.
I know about authors and all that.
So the chat room has the option of having just chat or chat and whiteboard or just whiteboard. So, maybe we should go back and use this again. We've been using Live Classroom because it has the audio component too. But the audio component is unsatisfying, it's often.
I remember that. It was still that same way.
Do you phone in, or do you try to use?
Well, I had to
microphone?
last time because I couldn't get in from where I was, but
Oh,
no.
okay.
You phone in, right?
We
No,
phone in,
actually,
that's phone in.
I like to, well, sometimes I phone in if I've forgotten my headset, but I like to use the headset just because I'm
Yeah.
hands-free.
Right.
Right, but that could be the thing, if students if they don't have that headset microphones, the quality would be unsatisfactory.
Right.
We've had a lot of success with phoning in with students. I had one professor who did snow days, or always live classroom days, and the students have to phone in, and it just works better, because by the time the kids scramble trying to find it, or trying to use a laptop microphone, it's just the phone seems to work better,
But I found that some cell phones don't seem to work.
That's true,
Oh, really?
the actual audio sampling rate of the online compression like Skype
Should be
or whatever
better.
is better than a cell phone.
Yeah, we've tried having everybody get on Skype with a live classroom session, but the coordination was tough. Alrighty, so I think we're done.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Good call.
Yes, yes. And I tried, I tried it once and I wasn't, and the audio quality was so poor that I said, let's not do this. And then I noticed that you actually have, you have a choice of audio quality when you do. So I haven't tried it with the
The only
higher
drawback
audio
Did you
quality.
work at?
is that you can only right now export the audio.
Right.
Oh, okay. Did you ever meet Jack and Fritz?
Upgraded to let the
Okay,
parent
never mind.
take care of that when you export the whole thing. But for some faculty who we were doing the ice break thing, like they were
Sorry guys,
using
it's in my leg.
do it themselves, we've been able to convince some of them and gotten.
And it's interesting where like these are dress shoes and
probably
seem
when
not
that
having
goes into,
trade
they would
whatsoever.
archive the session. It
What
goes into
quality?
the
So,
house. And you with high even, and they found it seems to be working well, because we've gotten complaints so far.
How did you do that? The demo student second modeler. So when do you think it was useful? How do you add that one? You can't add anyone or?
The instructors can't do that,
Oh.
so you have to be an administrator to
Oh.
create a user.
Oh.
But
So
you're,
instructor cannot add any.
no, no, but, well, probably, in general, it's a bad idea. But your administrator may be able to give you a demo student.
Yeah, I do have a demo student.
I know, but-
And then you say that audit.
Yeah, so where that's really useful is if, for instance, if you want to look at, do you turn it in?
Not yet. I'm thinking of that.
Okay, because in Turnitin, for instance,
Uh-huh.
if you go into student view, you don't, you just see the instructor view. There's no student view for Turnitin.
Oh.
There is an option of seeing, in Turnitin, it has a student, you see what the student sees. But, one of the reasons why I found, use this student is so that I can actually see what the students see. But mostly you don't need it. The demo student works quite well.
I see. I like the pictures, you put that
Oh,
on.
thank
So
you.
it's in the banner, right? When you create the course, you put your own picture
In the edit header, yes.
Edit
the header.
header there.
Yeah. link down on my Flickr site, you can go in and see my Flickr. I saw you writing, I don't know
Yeah, I
if you
wrote down
copied
your
that.
email and then Twitter.
How did your session go?
Well, I mean, it wasn't particularly well attended, but we.
Yeah, I know,
we
there
ended up-
wasn't, you know what, I think everybody was pretty evenly dispersed, which is great.